There once was a pious man, very pious man, who lived next to a river. The river was a nice calm river. It wasn't a fast flowing river. One day, however, he heard on the radio that there was going to be a storm, and the person on the radio advised everybody living in the lowland areas or near rivers to move to higher ground for their own safety. The pious man, however, was very God-fearing, and he believed that God would save him from any difficulty. So he decided to remain where he was. Well, sure enough, the rains came, the water started rising, the river started swelling, and pretty soon it burst its banks and it overflowed into his property. Presently, it started rising, and it became higher and higher and higher until it came to the door of his house. And then he noticed someone in a little boat, a little skiff. And this person came by and offered to help him and said to the pious man, "Let me take you to higher ground." The pious man said, "No, I'm a God-fearing person. I'm a pious fellow. I've done all my duties that God has asked me to do. He will not forsake me. I'm not going to move to higher ground. I'll be fine." The rain didn't cease, however, and the waters continued to rise. Pretty soon, the man's house began to get flooded, and he had to flee to the roof. The rain kept on, and the waters kept on rising. Presently, he only had a small, like an island area on the top of his roof. And then he heard a helicopter. He looked up, and sure enough, there was a helicopter. It was a rescue helicopter. And the helicopter hovered above him, dropped the rope ladder, and shouted down to him to grab hold of the ladder. We'll take you to higher ground. The pious man shouted back, "No, it's okay. God won't forsake me. I'm a pious man." Well, he drowned. Now he was upset with God. And so he asked God, "What happened? Why did you forsake me? Why did you let me drown? I was a very pious person. I did everything you asked for me to do." God looked at him and said, "I sent you a radio announcement. You didn't heed that. I sent you a person in a skiff. You didn't heed that either. And then I sent you a helicopter full of rescue personnel. You didn't heed that either. So what do you expect? Why are you so surprised to find yourself here after all the signs that I've given you?" The reason I'm narrating this story is because these kind of things, warnings, have been given to mankind periodically throughout history. And the ones who are given the responsibility of giving these warnings are the prophets. First of all, followed then by their followers, followed then by the learned, and followed by those who follow the learned. All these people repeat the same warnings. If mankind doesn't heed these warnings, and mankind finds himself in difficulty or in tragic circumstance, he has no one else to blame but himself. So, if the learned who are followers of the prophets are now saying words of advice, words of wisdom for the discerning, and the generality of people ignore that and then find themselves in difficulty, who is to blame? Ignorance is to blame. Arrogance is to blame. Obstinacy is to blame. Stubbornness is to blame. But we have typically and habitually find ourselves in this situation. We seem to hold with great reverence the vogue occurrences of the day. Everybody seems to jump on the same bandwagon. Everyone seems to be the cheerleader for the great sustainable development goals or for the fourth industrial revolution, how wonderful all these things are. And it's true. These things are worthwhile things. They're not something that we should reject wholeheartedly. But at the same time, we need to look at both the Sustainable Development Goals, like I was saying as an example, or the Fourth Industrial Revolution Goals as an example, and examine these things with a certain degree of discernment, a certain degree of wisdom, a certain degree of practicality as well, before we start jumping headlong into the milieu of the masses. Because If we don't, then if we find ourselves in tragic difficulty, who are we going to turn to place the responsibility of blame? We can't place it on the Sustainable Development Goals, nor can we place it on the Fourth Industrial Revolution. We have to place it on ourselves. We are the ones who are the end users, so to speak. Now, if we start talking about Sustainable Development Goals, these are interesting in the sense that there is more emphasis on technology and technological innovation to achieve these Sustainable Development Goals. Yet the emphasis is not on the human being, on humanity. Where is humanity's responsibility, therefore? It's no point talking now about how we should behave according to the Sustainable Development Goals. It should be the other way around. Our Sustainable Development Goals should be shaped and charted through the behavior of religious prescription, for lack of a better word. The same goes for the Fourth Industrial Revolution fervor. Everybody is so excited about it. We all want to jump on that bandwagon without realizing that this Fourth Industrial Revolution isn't really a marked departure from the Third Industrial Revolution, which in itself is not a marked departure from the Second Industrial Revolution, which in itself is not a departure from the First Industrial Revolution, that much of a departure. And yet we are behaving as though this is a panacea. And in reality, it's not. It's only a tool for us to be using. And if we ourselves are flawed, then the tools that we use will also be flawed. Who is the one who is programming artificial intelligence? Man. When I say man, I don't mean a gender, I mean mankind. We are the ones who are programming this artificial intelligence. We are the puppet master for the marionette, so to speak. So if man himself is flawed, whatever we try to program into this artificial intelligence will itself be flawed. If man has no morality, how will the artificial intelligence know how to make discerning choices? It's up to us to program those. But if we don't know them ourselves, how are we supposed to do that? All this technology is supposed to aid us, but it can also impede us. It's not the technology to blame, it's us. Therefore, in light of that, this little narrative or this little story that I mentioned in the beginning, although it may be humorous in nature, it is also like a warning. Look before you leap. Look at the signs. Try to recognize these things, which means that you have to have some kind of knowledge, some kind of wisdom, some kind of discernment, and an overarching sense of responsibility. If we don't have that, then I'm afraid all our Sustainable Development Goals dreams, all our Fourth Industrial Revolution participation will be for nothing. We will have expended lots of energy, lots of money, and yet we have come up with absolutely nothing or with precious little. And that's exactly not what we want. That's all for now. Thank you.